SDRTK here, and today we're going to take a look at an inexpensive option for connecting your composite video devices to HDMI. It's the Portta Composite to HDMI Scaler. So in this video, we're going to test the Portta Composite to HDMI Scaler with some retro and a few little less retro devices. We're going to start out by going way back to the Commodore VIC-20. We're going to connect it up with a composite cable to the Portta Scaler, and we're going to take a look at it on a TV as well as in a direct capture. We're then going to go to the Apple IIc, another device that many people are trying to figure out a way to get a good connection onto a modern monitor or screen. And we'll take a look at that on the screen as well as with a capture. We're then going to go to the Sega Genesis. And so what we'll do here is we'll look at the output from a classic device and we'll compare it to the AtGames Flashback version. So we have essentially a native device with composite output versus a device that's built to be HDMI. And I'm also going to do a test using the Xbox 360 as I have both composite and component cables, and we'll see how the composite to HDMI scaler compares with a component to HDMI scaled output. We'll also check for lag, color quality, and we'll see if this Portta device is a viable option. This device can also be used to capture VHS, Betamax, any other old school sources, but I thought I'd use some computers and video games as they tend to be a little more taxing on the unit. So now we'll open up the Portta Composite to HDMI Scaler, and the packaging doesn't look like much. I guess I can't expect a lot for $10, but this is how it was in the envelope from Amazon. In the package, there's an instruction manual. Looks like we get a cable as well, and this cable is a mini USB. We have the converter itself with RCA inputs, a scaler switch 1080 720p, HDMI out, mini USB power in, and that's about all we have here. So let's test it out and see how it works. We're fortunate to have a lot of options today to connect our retro consoles, computers, and other devices up to modern televisions. Sometimes we can just plug them right in, but the result generally from composite video isn't that great. So quite often we want to use a scaler. And while the price range is infinite in what we can get, sometimes depending on the amount of use we're going to get, we don't necessarily want to spend the money for the best option. So what about an inexpensive option? Well, at $10 today on Amazon, the Portta Composite to HDMI Scaler is about as inexpensive as it gets. So first we're going to test it out with some really vintage material. We're going to use a Commodore VIC-20. And we're going to connect that up through the Portta to an HDMI TV. I'll show you what it looks like on the screen, and I'll also do a direct capture using an Elgato HDMI capture card. So let's take a look. And so this is our first attempt with the Commodore VIC-20. And as you can see, I'm having an issue with the screen rolling. Now I can confirm that I've actually taken the VIC-20 apart. I've cleaned all the contacts, reseated the components. So I know it's working, and in fact, you'll see a little bit coming up that I ended up testing this without the converter, just using composite cables, and it in fact works. So with the composite converter into the TV, it is not working here. We'll also try it with a capture card. And this is the direct capture into the Elgato card. And as you can see, it is rolling here too. It's not the TV. And I decided to keep trying, so I actually went just to another television set, hooking up the composite directly, and it in fact was able to work. And so here you can see I have the VIC-20 hooked up to a 32-inch flat screen here. This is with a composite cable, high quality shielded composite cable, so we're getting good signal. And as you can see, the image quality is actually very, very good. It's a shame the scaler isn't able to take this signal and upconvert it, because we're starting out here with pretty good quality. So nothing to do with the VIC-20 or the cable. This one's all on the Portta Composite scaler. And in fairness, the VIC-20 is known to have an out-of-spec composite output. I did open it up and adjust the potentiometers in it to try and get the best possible picture, but still the Portta Composite to HD scaler just was not capable. So now that we've had a look at the VIC-20 on a modern display through the Portta Composite to HDMI Scaler, let's connect up another retro computer. This time it's the Apple IIc. And this device actually, a lot of people are searching for a way to get this to display on a modern monitor or television because it doesn't have built-in RGB or component. So let's take a look at the Apple IIc. And again, you can see the Apple IIc actually fared even worse with this adapter. So it's looking like this is not going to be the choice for very, very retro applications. And I tried the IIc with both the built-in composite output as well as a custom composite adapter that I had made up for the DB15 connector, which produces a much higher quality on monitors. So unfortunately, the Portta is not going to work with an Apple IIc. Now we'll move on and we'll test it with something a little bit newer, the Sega Genesis. And now we'll move ahead in time a bit. This time it's the Sega Genesis. And what we'll do here is we'll compare an original Sega Genesis scaled through the Portta Composite scaler versus the new Genesis console remake with native HDMI. And again, we'll look at them on screen, and we'll also take a look on a direct capture with an Elgato card and see just how different the video looks. So here we have the original Sega Genesis plugged in via composite to the Portta Composite to HDMI scaler. And as you can see from the TV, at this distance, it looks very playable. Looks like the colors are not perhaps as vivid as I remember them, but nonetheless, I think this could be a viable option, especially in such an inexpensive device. But let's take a look at the Flashback version from AtGames. So now we're looking at the AtGames Sega Genesis Flashback on the TV. And as you can see, it appears to be a realistic recreation of the original console. Looks to have the scan line set up in place, but a native HDMI recreation. Next, we'll take a look at some direct captures of the classic and the Flashback. Okay, so now we're looking at a direct capture of the AtGames Sega Genesis Flashback console. And of course, this is a native HDMI experience. So we'll see what it looks like. Obviously, this isn't a full rework and re-rendering, so it is the original game that's been ported to this new console. And what we're looking for here is, of course, the quality of the image, the colors, the experience in general for gameplay. And what we'll do, of course, is next we'll take a look at the original console playing the same sequence. And now we're looking at the original Sega Genesis. It's being captured and upscaled through the Portta Composite to HDMI scaler. And I'm pleased to see here that actually we have the original aspect ratio maintained. Let's take a look. So far, actually pretty impressed with the appearance through this scaler. Maybe not quite the same quality as the native HDMI of the AtGames Classic, but very playable. Looking at the quality of the graphics and colors here, so quite a surprise for an inexpensive scaler. Score 1 for Portta on this device. And so I recorded this intro scene from both the AtGames and the Classic console, just so you could see them side by side on the screen. And sync appears really good. I'm actually surprised at how close the playability is. So now that we looked at some retro applications, let's take a look at a little less retro application. We're going to take the Xbox 360 and we're going to compare the composite output scaled versus a component output scale. Again, we'll look at them side by side. We'll see them on the TV and you can make the comparison. Okay, so now we're looking at Crash of the Titans on the Xbox 360. On the screen right now, we're looking at the image that's rendered through the Portta Component scaler. So we have the component cables connected from the 360, and we see the image on the screen. Now, you won't be able to tell, I think, as much difference this way as when we do the actual direct capture, but I just wanted you to see what it looks like if you were kind of sitting in the room. And now we're looking at Crash of the Titans on the Xbox 360, but I've switched it over to composite output. And this is the image on the TV that's being presented from the Portta Composite to HDMI scaler, the device we're looking at today. So now that we've looked at composite versus component on the big screen, let's take a look at it on a direct capture. So now we're looking at cameo elements of power. And what I'm doing is just kind of a run through here, part of the game, just so you can get a look at what the graphics look like in terms of the color, the graininess, etc. And what I've done, of course, is I'm playing the game on one side, I'm running it in component, and the other side in composite, and so you can compare them. Not exactly the same footage, but I tried to give you like a similar area to take a look at. And I will say that it's very playable in both scenarios. So the composite is actually workable. Certainly not the same quality as component video, but what we're looking at here is more if we only had an option of composite. I just wanted to use a higher quality video source like the 360 so we could get a little bit more critical comparison between the two. So I hope this look helps you out, helps you see just kind of what to expect versus a little more modern platform. Hope you're enjoying this video, and if you are, consider liking or subscribing so you hear about the latest content I have coming out with gaming, content creation, microphones, audio, video, cameras, and more. Now let's get back to the Portta Composite to HDMI Scaler. Now that we've tried the Portta Composite to HDMI converter scaler, we can see that it's suitable for some of the newer retro game consoles, but the older items like older computers is really not going to be compatible with this unit. Now it's good to see that it works with the Sega Genesis Classic console, because the nice thing is that console also has a reputation for having difficult video to output, so good to see it works with that. And of course I wouldn't use it with an Xbox 360. Any console that gives you the option for component output is going to be the way to go versus composite. So very limited use cases for this particular scaler, but for 10 bucks we had to give it a try. Hope you enjoyed these tests of the Portta Composite to HDMI scaler. If you've got a Sega Genesis, this might be your $10 option, but otherwise I think I'd look elsewhere. This video is part of a series I'm creating on video hardware and conversion, so I encourage you to check out some of the other playlists on the screen. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.